Hi, it's me, Dick Jr. again, coming to you today. I'm going to read you Daniel chapter 3. I'm only going to do one reference out of this, and it's to Daniel chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. And actually, I'm going to just go ahead and turn back to that right now. And the only reason I'm taking this reference is if you haven't watched any of the other videos, then it would be confusing to you as to who these young men that we're going to be talking about were. So I'm going to go ahead and read this. This is from Daniel chapter 1, verses 6 and 7. Now among them from the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Then the commander of the officials assigned new names to them, and to Daniel he assigned the name Belshazzar, to Hananiah Shadrach, to Mishael Meshach, and to Azariah Abednego. Okay, so it's Meshach, Shadrach, and Abednego, and then Belshazzar. That's the Jewish boys' names. The book of Daniel is written by Belshazzar in the court of Nebuchadnezzar. All right, so I'm going to go here to verse 1, chapter 3 of Daniel. Nebuchadnezzar the king made an image of gold, the height of which was 6 cubits, and its width was 6 cubits. He set it up on the plain of Dura in the province of Babylon. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king sent word to assemble the satraps, the prefects, the governors, the counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the rulers of the provinces to come to the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. And take note, this statement comes more than once. The king had set up, the king had set up, the king had set up. Okay? Then the satraps, the prefects, and the governors and counselors, the treasurers, the judges, the magistrates, and all the rulers of the provinces were assembled for the dedication of the image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. See? They stood before the image that Nebuchadnezzar had set up. Then the herald loudly proclaimed, "To you the command is given, O peoples, nations, and men of every language, that at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, bagpipe, and all kinds of music, you are to fall down and worship the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king has set up. But whoever does not fall down and worship shall immediately be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire. Therefore at that time, when all the peoples heard the sound of the horn, the flute, the lyre, the trigon, the psaltery, the bagpipe, and all kinds of music, all the peoples, nations, and men of every language fell down and worshipped the golden image that Nebuchadnezzar the king had set up. For this reason at that time," I like how that says, "for this reason at that time." Very specific. "Certain Chaldeans came forward and brought charges against the Jews. They responded and said to Nebuchadnezzar the king, 'O king, live forever. You, O king, have made a decree that every man who hears the sound of the horn, flute, lyre, trigon, psaltery, bagpipe, and all kinds of music is to fall down and worship the golden image. But whoever does not fall down and worship shall be cast into the midst of a furnace of blazing fire. There are certain Jews whom you have appointed over the administration of the province of Babylon, namely Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. These men, O king, have disregarded you. They do not serve your gods or worship the golden image which you have set up.'" And so he knew this, obviously, but he also knew that he gave the decree. And so since this Chaldean brought this to him in public in front of him, he had to respond to this. And his response is exactly, I said that. But the reason that I gave you those verses earlier is because pretty much the rest of this book, Daniel, it's Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and they do refer to Daniel as Belshazzar and Daniel. But for the rest of the book, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And after here on, it changes out pretty much. So then Nebuchadnezzar, in rage and anger, gave orders to bring Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Then these men were brought before the king. I believe that the rage was because the Chaldean did this and he had to do it, because he already knew. We read chapter 2. He put these young men in charge and already said their God knew what he was doing. Okay? Verse 14, Nebuchadnezzar responded and said to them, "Is it true, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, that you do not serve my gods or worship the golden image that I have set up?" And see, he never asked them, any of them. If you go back through what I just read, it doesn't say to worship the gods. It says to bow down and worship this image. Okay. Now, if you are ready at the moment you hear the sound of the horn, the flute, the lyre, the trigon, the psaltery, the bagpipe, and all kinds of music, to fall down and worship the image that I have made, very well. But if you do not worship, you will immediately be cast in the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. And what God is there who can deliver you out of my hands? I like that. I find it interesting how Nebuchadnezzar said that. I don't think he wanted to throw him into the fire. I really don't. Okay? He just wanted him to realize that there was no God, and these boys believe that there is a God, and I believe that there is a God. Okay? So Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego replied to the king, "O Nebuchadnezzar," and I'm sure that's the way it came across too. "Oh, Nebuchadnezzar." Okay, we do not need to give you an answer concerning this matter, because like I said, he already knew. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the furnace of blazing fire, and he will deliver us out of your hand, O king. But even if he does not, let it be known to you, O king, that we are not going to serve your gods or worship the golden image that you have set up. Now this made the king mad, because to him it wasn't the same as it was to these three young men. This was just an image that he set up. In fact, he doesn't even believe in gods, and he does know about their God, but yeah. So then Nebuchadnezzar was filled with wrath, and his facial expression was altered toward Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, because he was really mad now. He wasn't mad before. He was just trying to get him to do what he said. Now he's mad. Okay. He answered by giving orders to heat the furnace 7 times more than it was usually heated, and he had to go through with it because everybody's watching here. He commanded certain valiant warriors who were in his army to tie up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego in order to cast them into the furnace of blazing fire. Then these men were tied up in their trousers, their coats, their caps, and their other clothes, and were cast in the midst of the furnace of blazing fire. For this reason, because of the king's command was urgent, and the furnace had been made extremely hot, the flame of the fire slew those men who carried up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. But these 3 men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell into the midst of the furnace of blazing fire, still tied up. Then Nebuchadnezzar the king was astounded and stood up in haste. He said to his high officials, "Was it not 3 men we cast into the midst of the fire?" They replied to the king, "Certainly, O king." He said, "Look, I see 4 men loose and walking about in the midst of the fire without harm, and the appearance of the 4th is like a son of the gods." I could go to some scriptures, but many and I believe that this is Jesus walking with them, the Son of God. Then Nebuchadnezzar came near to the door of the furnace of blazing fire. He responded and said, "Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, come out, you servants of the Most High God, and come here." Then Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego came out of the midst of the fire. The satraps, the prefects, the governors, and the king's high officials gathered around and saw in regard to these men that the fire had no effect on their bodies or these men, nor was their hair of the head singed, nor were their trousers damaged, nor had the smell of fire even come upon them. They didn't even smell like smoke. Nebuchadnezzar responded and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who has sent his angel and delivered his servants who put their trust in him, violating the king's command and yielded up their bodies so as not to serve or worship any god except their own God. Therefore, I make a decree that any people, nation, or tongue that speaks anything offensive against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego shall be torn limb from limb, and their houses reduced to a rubbish heap, inasmuch as there is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. Then the king caused Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego to prosper in the province of Babylon. But I want to go back to this verse here and run through what Nebuchadnezzar says right here. There is no other God who is able to deliver in this way. That's what Nebuchadnezzar says. And that's what we believe. And that's what those young men believed. And they survived. And see, I don't believe that these stories in here, that these are just stories. I believe that these are truths, okay? Because so much of this stuff correlates with Babylonian history, okay? Because a lot of this stuff is written down, okay? And so I don't think that one book is right and the other book is wrong because they correlate. And I know that there are no lies in here, okay? There are certainly no lies. Everything that I've read, and I've spent the last 4 years reading the Bible, everything in here is true. So that's all I have for today. And God bless and thanks for listening.